We're standing beside a public drinking fountain, a Sabil, made of stone 5 centuries ago to quench the thirst of Jerusalemites. It's still here, watching life go by in these streets. This little fountain has been here since a new empire, that of the Ottoman Turks, took over the city and gave it centuries of stability. Old Jerusalem, as we now know it, was largely created in these years, as this fountain bubbled away on a street near the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But how did people from Turkey end up ruling Jerusalem in the first place? Explaining that means jumping back quickly to the end of the Crusaders and their Latin kingdom of Jerusalem. After all the trouble they'd gone through to get here, Crusader rule in the city lasted less than 90 years. When the famous Muslim general Saladin defeated the Christians in 1187, the Crusaders held out in the city of Akko and other forts in what is now northern Israel, but Jerusalem reverted to Muslim rule. What the Crusaders had built, however, didn't disappear. Instead, much of their work was simply plundered and reused by the new city planners. Saladin's dynasty, known as the Ayyubids, often made use of Crusader stones to build their new version of Jerusalem. In some cases, entire churches were taken and converted into madrasas, schools for the study of the Quran. After the Ayyubids came a new dynasty, the Mamluks, who began as enslaved people trained to serve as soldiers and eventually came to rule. In the Mamluk period too, builders reused countless Crusader elements like decorative fragments and striking architectural details. After the Mamluks, in the year 1516, came the new Muslim power that was expanding across the Middle East and into Europe, the Turks of the Ottoman Empire. The most famous builder of Ottoman Jerusalem was the Turkish Sultan Suleiman, known as Suleiman the Magnificent. It was Suleiman who rebuilt the city walls, incorporating the latest techniques of fortification and the new age of gunpowder and artillery. The gates he built are shaped like an L. When you enter through Jaffa Gate, for example, there's a sudden 90-degree turn that feels odd and inconvenient for visitors. This was a precaution against charging cavalry. If an enemy entered on horseback, the horses would get stuck at the corner and find it hard to take the turn. While the intruders were stuck in the passage, they could be showered from above with boiling oil, molten lead, and arrows. The special holes and slits built for this purpose are still visible. So skillfully were the walls and gates designed to withstand a siege, in fact, that they never had to. After Suleiman's works were completed, no one made a serious attempt to conquer Jerusalem for nearly 4 centuries, until World War I. After the Ottoman period, there are virtually no distinct archaeological layers in Jerusalem. The story unfolds in the same physical landscape created in those years, like these stone houses, where people still live today. Dramatic new changes only began to take place again in the 1800s, after Napoleon's failed attempt to conquer Egypt and the Holy Land. His military campaigns led to renewed interest among Europeans. Christian governments began paying attention to the neglected holy sites. New residents arrived, and by the 1860s, people were starting to move outside the walls built by Suleiman the Magnificent. A new gate was added, the 8th, to allow residents of the old Christian quarter to easily access new streets and buildings outside. This gate was called New Gate, and even though it was opened in 1887, that's still what it's called. To the west, new Jewish neighborhoods appeared, like Mishkenot Sha'ananim and Yamin Moshe. The great powers of Europe began competing to open post offices and hospitals, and new and striking architectural landmarks began to appear around the city. Near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, for example, German builders raised the tall bell tower of the Lutheran Church of the Redeemer. Germans also built the Dormition Abbey on Mount Zion and the Augusta Victoria Hospital on the Mount of Olives. The Russians created their own landmark on the Mount of Olives, the bell tower of the Ascension Monastery, and the Church of Mary Magdalene, with its golden onion domes. Outside the old city walls, the Tsar's government built the Russian compound, and next door, the French constructed Notre Dame and the St. Louis Hospital. The more such buildings were erected in the city, the easier it became to host pilgrims and later tourists, who came in ever greater numbers. The Ottomans had arrived in Jerusalem at a time that was nearly medieval. Their rule was now approaching its end in what is recognizably the modern world. Newspapers were published and scholarly journals. The first archaeological excavations were underway. The first geographic survey of the city in 1864 was conducted when authorities decided it was time to finally replace the aqueduct that Suleiman had constructed 300 years before. The same water system was still feeding the Sultan's network of public fountains, like the Sabil, with which we began. Jerusalem has never had enough water for its people. So throughout history, when Jerusalem had a strong government, a central aqueduct system would be in operation, bringing in water from elsewhere. That was the case in the time of Herod the Great, during the Roman period, for example, and it was the case in the time of Suleiman the Magnificent. In Arabic, the word Sabil means path. According to Islamic tradition, if someone has water on their land, they must make a path to it that is accessible to all. Water is for everyone. That's the source of the name of the street fountains. As anyone who's spent a summer in the Middle East knows, there are few things as valuable as water and shade. The Sabils that we can still see in the old city are eclectic in design. They were assembled from bits and pieces that Suleiman's builders seem to have found lying around. At the base of this one, for instance, the trough meant to allow animals to drink is actually a Roman sarcophagus. Much of the fountain is pieced together from fragments dating back to the Crusader era or other eras, like these slender little columns with their charming curly capitals. The central feature is known as a muqarnas, decorative elements that look like stalactites, a feature of the architecture of the Mamluks, the dynasty that preceded the Turks. But just so every thirsty passerby understands exactly who deserves their thanks for building the fountain, there's an inscription explaining that credit goes to our master the Sultan, the greatest king, who rules the necks of the nations, the Sultan of the land of Rome, the Arabs and non-Arabs, the glory of Islam and Muslims, the shadow of God on earth, the Sultan Suleiman. The Turkish Sultan's designers and workers were willing to use what had come before, but wanted everyone to know who was now permanently in charge. But if Jerusalem teaches us anything, it's that when it comes to the rule of humans, their empires and religions, nothing is ever permanent.